Welcome back to the Lost Legends. I'm Adam Jones, and today I'm changing my format and taking you to South Texas to camp out under the stars and watch for the infamous Marfa Lights. I normally use this show to talk about old stories, but not today. Today's episode is about a real, ongoing mystery that you can go see for yourself. The Marfa Lights have been the source of confusing stories for a long time, and every day they ignite very heated internet arguments. If you scan through the articles and forums, you can easily get confused about what these lights are. But don't worry, folks, I'm here. And it just so happens that very recently I had the chance to visit Marfa, Texas. Like I said, my podcast is normally about the past, but this was one of the only chances I'd ever get to see a real mystery for myself instead of reading about it in a book. And it was a blast. For starters, what are the Marfa Lights? Most stories tell you that they're a series of strange orbs that move around in the sky, and they can only be seen from a very specific location just outside of Marfa, Texas. What they don't tell you is that Marfa is basically what people mean when they say in the middle of nowhere. It's a tiny blink and you'll miss it town that's too small to be found on a lot of maps. A few manufacturing businesses provide the town's economic backbone, and for reasons no one can understand, Marfa's recently become a place for artists who want to work in obscurity. On one block you'll see people welding cattle gates, and on the next you'll walk past a snooty Andy Warhol exhibit. Marfa is easily the strangest town I've ever been to, even without the weird lights. So what are these lights? The oldest record of them comes from 1883, when a cowboy saw some lights floating in the distance. He thought they might be campfires from a local Apache tribe. The story isn't very useful because it doesn't tell us very much, and because we can't verify if it's true or something that was made up to sell magazines. But it is the first in a long string of stories about these lights. Now, as these stories grew, people began making the long trip to Marfa to watch for the lights, which is not easy to do. Just driving there is a challenge, and until recently, watching for the lights meant sitting on the dirt in the middle of nowhere and hoping you were facing in the right direction. Oh, and did I mention it's rattlesnake country out there? Now, what's interesting about this phenomena, other than the lights themselves, is how strangely divisive this topic is. I can't imagine why, but mention the Marfa Lights and people get defensive. And we met all kinds of defensive people on our trip. I told one of the locals I was going to see the lights while I was in town, and he got upset. He treated me like a lunatic who chases UFOs and got away from me as quick as he could. But in his defense, there's some strange theories about these lights, and I can understand why some people would want to separate themselves from them. People will tell you that these lights are intelligent beings who live underground, or an interstellar convoy of magic lights, a top-secret experiment left over from the Air Force base that used to be there, or the ghosts of old cowboys trying to get back to their ranch. It gets wild, and we met people who were incredibly defensive and angry when people didn't like their nutty theories. So you've got people who push these theories, but then you've got people who make fun of them. An article from Texas Monthly called "The Truth Is Out There" is a great example of this petty behavior. In this article, the reporter claims they stayed up to watch the Marfa Lights and were woken up in the middle of the night to see, and I quote, "a glowing, bulbous teardrop of light, full of what looked like writhing snakes of fire. It was huge, bigger than any non-lunar thing I'd ever seen in the night sky, and sure enough, it was hovering." And they go on to say that this teardrop of flaming light was Venus. Venus. Now, this article is just plain silly. Venus shows up in a very predictable place in the sky, and it looks nothing like a teardrop covered in snakes of fire. Also, it doesn't show up in the same place as the Marfa Lights. I don't know what this reporter did, but what they saw was neither Venus or the Marfa Lights. So you can see how the Marfa Lights have developed a strange life of their own as a conversation topic, where it's more important to argue than to figure out what's going on. And I hate that. I don't think there's a single topic Americans won't try to fight over, and it's depressing that when we discover something really incredible, like the Marfa Lights, We have to turn it into an online battleground instead of just enjoying it. After reading articles like this all my life, I was glad for the chance to find out what's going on for myself. So we took the insanely long drive to South Texas, stopping along the way at the last Bennigan's in the state and the wonderful Stonehenge replica, and then finally pulled into the strange city of Marfa and unpacked our bags in a hotel where Elizabeth Taylor once stayed. And guys, I saw the lights. They are real, and it was amazing. My wife and I visited the viewing area twice on our trip. The area has come a long way since the days of sitting on the ground in the dark. Now there's a covered concrete area with benches and telescopes and incredibly spacious bathrooms. Every night, cars line the road, and the viewing area is packed with people from every corner of the United States. It's like seeing a pilgrimage. People pile out of tour buses and out of cramped vans full of families, and they line up against that front rail just as the sun sets. Now, the first thing you notice about South Texas at night is that the light does strange things out there. Moonlight will flash against anything shiny for miles and miles. The land is so flat you see tricks of light everywhere you look. It's easy to be distracted and think you're seeing a Marfa light here or there, only to realize it's a strange reflection or an unusual shadow. But like I said, light travels differently in an unendingly flat area, and light and shadow looks really different out there. It's fascinating to see. But after we looked around and wondered if we were going to see anything at all, finally we did. And I know it's going to sound crazy and weird, so just bear with me. My wife saw it first. She pointed, and I turned and saw a light, an orb of light way, way above the horizon, far in the distance. I didn't believe it. It looked like the top of a radio tower. But then I noticed it was much higher than the radio towers, and it was moving. The orb of light moved downward and diagonally to the right as if it was following an unerringly straight path, and then it just disappeared. I wasn't convinced. That light could have been anything. A drone. Well, okay, not a drone, because I could tell it was something much larger than a drone. But something. I wasn't impressed yet. Another light blinked into existence, higher and to the left from the first one. It traveled downward along the same invisible straight line path. And now I was curious. But this light did something else. It stopped. It just stopped. We all held our breath as this light, I'm not kidding, this light split into 3 other lights just as big. Then they traveled in a group, diagonally downward, down and to the right, and disappeared well above the horizon, just like the first one. This went on all night. Sometimes the lights would start lower and travel up. Sometimes they would split into 2 or 3 lights, or sometimes 2 or 3 lights would pause to converge into 1 light before traveling on this convoy of light. I was speechless. Now, people will debate whether or not these lights exist, but there really is no question. Crowds see the lights every single week. It's a reliable and easily observable phenomena. The only question that remains is, what are they? The leading theory is that these lights are caused by car headlights. I heard this quite a few times, and it seems to make the most sense. But the lights don't look like headlights. Each light is one single orb of varying colors, not a pair of lights, and they always move at the same speed, except when they stop completely. So while the headlights theory is the best one we have, I feel like it doesn't completely answer the question. But I can't tell you that I'm leaning toward a mirage as an explanation. The reason I say that is that these lights become invisible the moment you leave the viewing area. We left after watching these lights for 2 hours. And once we walked to our car, the lights were invisible. Gone. That's exactly what you would see if it was a mirage. I just don't think it's a mirage that our scientists understand yet, and one day we will. But for now, it's a wonderful mystery, and if you have a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. That's all for this episode of The Lost Legends. Next time, we'll learn the truth about Guy Fawkes, whose story is a lot stranger than you might think. If you like what you hear on The Lost Legends, go sign up for my mailing list at authoradamjones.com. And until next time, I'm Adam Jones, and this is The Lost Legends.